The air was thick with the acrid scent of smoke, and the blazing sun was veiled by a choking, ominous haze. Sirens wailed through the small rural town, a sound as foreboding as the growing flames in the nearby forest. Residents packed their belongings hastily, while the fire department scrambled to establish containment lines. Noah, a seasoned firefighter with years of experience battling nature's fury, secured his gear and took a deep breath. Despite the heat and the chaos, he exuded calm authority, a figure of reassurance for his team. Yet, an unshakable feeling tugged at the edges of his mind, a premonition that this mission would be unlike any other. Flames are spreading north. Keep civilians clear and focus on cutting off the fire's path. The chief's voice barked through the radio. Noah nodded, leading his team into the dense forest, where the inferno roared with terrifying intensity. As they moved deeper into the blaze, something unexpected pierced through the crackling of a desperate, high-pitched bark. The sound carried a sense of urgency, pulling Noah's attention away from the task at hand. He paused, straining to listen. "Do you hear that?" he asked a colleague. But the other man shook his head, focused on clearing a path through the undergrowth. Noah's heart quickened. Against his better judgment, he turned toward the sound, breaking away from the group. The barks grew louder as he navigated through the smoky maze of trees, each step guided by the invisible pull of an unseen force. At the base of a smoldering slope, he found the source. A scruffy dog, trapped beneath a tangle of burning branches. The animal writhed in panic, its eyes wide with fear. "Hold on, buddy," Noah murmured, crouching down. With practiced precision, he used his tools to clear the debris, freeing the dog from its fiery prison. The animal stumbled to its feet, its coat singed, but its spirit unbroken. To Noah's surprise, the dog didn't flee. Instead, it looked up at him, its gaze filled with an almost human urgency, then turned and darted toward a narrow, overgrown trail. "Where are you going?" Noah called after it, half expecting the animal to disappear into the woods. But it stopped, looking back at him expectantly, as if beckoning him to follow. His instincts screamed to return to his team, but something about the dog's behavior was impossible to ignore. Tightening his grip on his gear, Noah made the decision to follow. The trail was barely visible, choked with underbrush and scorched by the advancing fire. The dog led him with uncanny certainty, weaving through obstacles as if it knew the forest intimately. After what felt like an eternity, the path opened up to reveal a dilapidated cabin, partially scorched, but still standing. The dog rushed to the door, barking furiously. Noah hesitated, his senses on high alert. Pushing the door open, he was met with a scene that froze him in place. Inside the cabin, a group of children huddled together, their faces streaked with soot and tears. The oldest couldn't have been more than 10, while the youngest, no older than 3, clung to a threadbare blanket. "Who left you here?" Noah's voice cracked with disbelief. One of the older children, a girl with wide, frightened eyes, stepped forward. "They said they'd come back for us," she whispered, her voice trembling. "But they never did." Noah's heart clenched. The air inside the cabin was heavy with smoke, and the fire outside was drawing closer with each passing second. "Listen to me," he said, kneeling to meet their eyes. "I'm here to help, but we have to leave now." The children stared at him, their fear palpable. Slowly, one by one, they nodded. Noah wasted no time. He scooped the smallest child into his arms and motioned for the others to follow him. Outside, the dog waited, its ears perked and its tail wagging anxiously. It began leading them back down the trail, guiding them through the perilous terrain. As the group reached a relatively safe clearing, Noah realized he had to go back for the last 2 children still inside the cabin. "Stay here," he instructed the others, kneeling to set the youngest child down. "I'll be right back. Watch them," he said, glancing at the dog. With adrenaline coursing through his veins, Noah sprinted back to the cabin. The fire was closer now, licking at the walls and threatening to consume the structure. Inside, he found the remaining children, their faces pale with fear. "It's okay," he said, his voice steady despite the chaos around him. "I've got you." With one child in each arm, he navigated back through the collapsing cabin. The heat was unbearable, and smoke filled his lungs with every breath. Just as it seemed there was no way out, the dog's bark echoed through the haze, guiding him to safety. When Noah emerged from the forest, carrying the last 2 children, a wave of relief swept over him. The other children ran to him, their tear-streaked faces lighting up with hope. Collapsing to his knees, Noah let out a shaky breath. He looked at the dog, now sitting calmly at his side, as if its job was done. But Noah knew this was just the beginning. The questions swirled in his mind. Who had left these children here? Why? And what would happen to them now? As he gazed at their innocent faces, one thing became clear. He wouldn't stop until he found the answers. Noah's thoughts raced as he led the group of frightened children to a safer area, guided by the persistent dog that seemed to understand the urgency of the situation. The forest behind them continued to burn, the roaring flames consuming everything in their path. The children clung to him and to each other, their faces streaked with soot and fear, while the dog darted ahead, turning back occasionally to make sure they were following. When they reached a clearing that was relatively untouched by the fire, Noah set the youngest child down and scanned the area for any signs of immediate danger. The dog stood at the edge of the clearing, its ears perked and tail wagging as if urging him to follow once more. "Stay here," Noah instructed the children gently. "I need to check something." The older ones nodded, their eyes wide with uncertainty. The youngest of the group, a little boy no older than 4, reached out and grabbed Noah's pant leg. "Don't go," he whimpered, his voice barely audible over the distant crackle of flames. Noah knelt down and placed a reassuring hand on the boy's shoulder. "I'll be right back, I promise," he said. The dog barked sharply, pulling his attention back to the path. Reluctantly, Noah rose and followed, his boots crunching against the charred debris. The animal moved with purpose, leading him down a narrow, overgrown trail that twisted and turned through the dense forest. As the trail descended into a small valley, Noah noticed the air growing cooler, the scent of smoke less overpowering. The dog stopped abruptly in front of a second structure, smaller and more hidden than the first cabin. Its wooden exterior was charred but intact, and it appeared to have been deliberately camouflaged by the surrounding trees and brush. Noah's heart sank as he approached the building. He hesitated at the door, his instincts warning him that whatever he found inside might be even worse than what he had already witnessed. Summoning his courage, he pushed the door open. Inside, the scene was both heartbreaking and surreal. The room was dimly lit, with faint beams of light filtering through cracks in the walls. A group of children, huddled together in a corner, stared at him with wide, fearful eyes. The oldest, a girl of about 10, held a makeshift club in her hand, her trembling arms raised defensively. "It's okay," Noah said softly, raising his hands to show he meant no harm. "I'm here to help." The girl's grip on the club loosened slightly, but her expression remained wary. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice shaking. "My name is Noah. I'm a firefighter," he said, kneeling to their level. "I found some of your friends nearby. They're safe now. I'm here to get you out of here." The girl's eyes filled with tears, and she lowered the club completely. "They said they'd come back for us," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Who said that?" Noah pressed gently, though his stomach churned with the possibilities. She shook her head, tears spilling down her soot-streaked cheeks. "I don't know. They just left us here." Noah felt a surge of anger and despair. Who could abandon children in the middle of a wildfire? He scanned the room, noting the sparse makeshift bedding and the few scattered belongings. A ragged teddy bear, a chipped bowl, a faded photograph. This wasn't just neglect. It was cruelty. "We don't have time to talk now," he said, his voice firm but kind. "We need to get out of here before the fire reaches this place." One by one, he helped the children to their feet. There were 5 of them in total, their ages ranging from about 3 to 10. They were thin and pale, their clothes tattered and their faces marked by weeks, perhaps months, of hardship. As he led them outside, the dog circled back to guide them once more, its movements as deliberate as before. The trail back to the clearing felt longer and more treacherous, the sounds of the advancing fire growing louder with each step. When they finally reunited with the first group of children, a wave of relief washed over Noah. The sight of their tearful embraces and whispered reassurances was a small comfort amidst the chaos. But the questions weighed heavily on his mind. Who had abandoned these children? Why were they left in such a remote and dangerous location? And most pressing of all, how many more were out there? As he scanned the frightened faces around him, Noah knew one thing for certain. He couldn't stop now. These children needed more than a rescue. They needed answers, justice, and a chance at a better future. The dog, now sitting calmly at his side, seemed to share his resolve. "Looks like you're not done helping me yet," Noah said quietly, scratching behind the dog's ears. The animal wagged its tail as if to say, "We're just getting started." The forest was alive with the deafening roar of flames and the oppressive heat that seemed to close in from every direction. Noah took a deep breath, his lungs protesting against the smoke-filled air, as he gathered the children around him. The urgency in his voice left no room for doubt. "Listen carefully," he said, kneeling to meet their wide-eyed stares. "We're going to get out of here together, but you have to stay close to me. Don't let go of each other, no matter what." The oldest girl, the one who had wielded the makeshift club, nodded firmly. "We'll do what you say," she whispered, her voice steady despite the terror in her eyes. Noah felt a surge of pride at her bravery, but there was no time to dwell on it. The dog, his unexpected and invaluable ally, barked sharply, drawing his attention to a faintly visible path through the trees. It was narrow and cluttered with debris, but it seemed to be the safest route out of the advancing fire. "Follow the dog," he instructed, ushering the children forward. The dog led the way, its movements quick and deliberate. Noah stayed at the rear, his eyes constantly scanning for any sign of danger. The flames were dangerously close now, licking at the edges of the trail and filling the air with an ominous crackle. The youngest child stumbled, his small legs unable to keep up with the frantic pace. Noah scooped him up without hesitation, the boy clinging to him tightly. "You're okay," he murmured, though he wasn't sure if he was reassuring the child or himself. As they moved deeper into the forest, the terrain became more challenging. Fallen branches and smoldering logs blocked their path, forcing them to climb or detour around obstacles. The older children helped each other, their fear momentarily overshadowed by the urgency of survival. Noah's muscles burned with the effort of carrying the youngest child while navigating the treacherous trail. Sweat mixed with soot dripped down his face, and every breath felt like inhaling fire. But he refused to stop. The dog barked again, this time with a sense of urgency that made Noah's stomach drop. Ahead of them, a large tree had fallen across the path, its massive trunk ablaze. The heat was intense, and the children hesitated, their courage faltering. "It's okay," Noah said, his voice firm. "We'll get through this." He set the boy down carefully and assessed the situation. The fire wasn't yet fully engulfing the tree, leaving a narrow gap they could crawl under. "You first," he instructed the oldest girl, who nodded and dropped to her knees. One by one, the children followed her lead, crawling under the burning tree with Noah guiding them and helping them to their feet on the other side. When the last child was through, Noah prepared to crawl under himself. But as he crouched, a sudden groan from the tree above sent a chill down his spine. It was about to collapse completely. "Move!" he shouted, scrambling to get to the other side. The tree gave way with a deafening crash just as Noah cleared it. Flames erupting in a burst of sparks. The children screamed, but Noah quickly pulled them together, his protective instincts overriding his exhaustion. "We're okay," he said, his voice steady despite his pounding heart. "We're almost there." The dog barked again, urging them forward. The path widened, and Noah could see the faint outline of the clearing ahead. Relief flooded through him, but it was short-lived. Behind them, the fire surged, the flames advancing with terrifying speed. They had no time to rest. "Run!" Noah shouted, his voice carrying over the roar of the blaze. The children obeyed, their small legs pumping as they raced toward safety. Noah stayed behind, ensuring no one fell behind. The dog darted back and forth, as if urging them on. When they finally burst into the clearing, the cool air felt like a blessing. Noah collapsed to his knees, gasping for breath. The children huddled together, their faces streaked with soot and tears, but alive. The dog, now visibly exhausted, sat down beside him, its tongue lolling out as it panted heavily. "You did it," Noah said, scratching behind its ears. "We all did." But as relief washed over him, so did the weight of unanswered questions. These children were safe for now, but what about the others? The fire wasn't contained, and there could be more cabins, more children, more lives at risk. Noah stood, his determination renewed. He had no intention of leaving this forest until he was sure there were no more lives to save. "Stay here," he told the children. "Help will come soon." The oldest girl grabbed his arm. "You're going back?" she asked, her voice filled with both fear and admiration. Noah nodded. "There might be more out there. I have to make sure." The dog barked, standing as if ready to lead him once again. Noah smiled grimly. "Looks like you're coming with me." As he turned back toward the inferno, the children watched him with wide eyes, their whispers barely audible. "Do you think he'll find more kids?" one of them asked. The oldest girl nodded, her gaze unwavering. "If anyone can, it's him." And with that, Noah disappeared back into the smoke and flames, the dog faithfully at his side, ready to face whatever lay ahead. The clearing was quiet, except for the distant crackling of flames and the soft murmurs of the children. Noah had been gone for less than an hour, but to the children, it felt like an eternity. They huddled together for comfort, the youngest nestled in the oldest girl's lap as she whispered soothing words. The dog, now affectionately nicknamed Lucky by the children, paced the perimeter, its keen eyes scanning the smoky horizon. It seemed to understand the enormity of the situation, its body tense and alert. When Noah finally emerged from the tree line, his face blackened with soot, and his shoulders heavy with exhaustion. The children cheered weakly, relief flooding their tear-streaked faces. But he was alone. "There's no one else," he said softly, his voice carrying both sadness and relief. "At least, not that I could find." The children rushed to him, wrapping their small arms around his legs in gratitude. Noah knelt down, embracing them as a group, his heart breaking under the weight of their trust. A few moments later, a rescue team arrived in the clearing, their flashing lights and distant shouts announcing their approach. Medics immediately attended to the children, checking for injuries and dehydration. Noah stayed nearby, his protective instincts not allowing him to stray too far. As the children were transported to a makeshift community shelter in the town, Noah accompanied them, unable to shake the nagging feeling that there was more to uncover about their situation. At the shelter, the children were given food, water, and clean clothes. For the first time in what seemed like days, they began to relax. But the scars of their ordeal were evident in their wary glances and quiet conversations. Noah sat in the corner, his eyes fixed on the group. Lucky lay at his feet, finally resting after the exhausting ordeal. As the youngest child, a boy no older than 4, clutched a juice box and stared at Noah with wide eyes. The firefighter couldn't help but wonder, what have they been through? The oldest girl, whose name he learned was Emma, approached him cautiously. "Thank you," she said softly, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hand. "You're welcome," Noah replied, offering her a small smile. "But now, I need your help." Emma hesitated, then nodded. "Can you tell me anything about who left you in that cabin?" Her face fell, and her shoulders slumped under the weight of the memory. "They didn't tell us much," she began hesitantly. "Just that we were going somewhere safe, but they never came back." "Who were they?" Emma shook her head. "I don't know their names. They were strangers. They took us from places." "What places?" She hesitated again, glancing at the other children as if afraid of upsetting them. "Some of us were at home. Some of us weren't. I think they were just trying to get rid of us." Noah's stomach churned. The implications of her words were horrifying. He leaned forward, lowering his voice. "Do you remember anything else? Anything that might help me find out who did this?" Emma nodded slowly, pulling a small object from her pocket. It was a scrap of paper, singed at the edges but still legible. Noah took it carefully and read the hastily scribbled words. "Cabin drop. Move them by Monday." His heart sank. The note confirmed his worst fears. This wasn't an accident or a case of misplaced children. Someone had deliberately abandoned them. "Emma," he said gently, "I'm going to make sure this doesn't happen to you or anyone else ever again. I promise." The girl's eyes filled with tears, but she nodded firmly. "I believe you." As the hours passed, Noah worked to gather more information. The children shared fragments of their experiences, brief glimpses of the neglect and abandonment they had suffered. Some spoke of being told they were too much trouble or too expensive. Others had vague memories of being taken from one place to another, always with the promise of safety that never came. One boy, older and more withdrawn than the others, finally broke his silence. "They said we weren't worth keeping," staring at the floor. "That someone would take care of us. But no one ever did." Noah clenched his fists, his anger bubbling beneath the surface. These children had been treated as disposable, their lives devalued by those who should have protected them. He stepped outside to clear his head, the cool night air doing little to ease the storm raging within him. Lucky followed, sitting at his feet and looking up at him with understanding eyes. "What kind of people do this, Lucky?" he murmured, his voice heavy with emotion. "Who just throws children away?" The dog whined softly, resting its head on his boot as if to offer comfort. Noah made a silent vow then and there. He wouldn't rest until he uncovered the truth. These children deserved justice, and he would stop at nothing to ensure they got it. Noah couldn't sleep that night. The haunting words of the children echoed in his mind. They said we weren't worth keeping. He stared at the singed note Emma had given him, its cryptic message weighing heavily on his conscience. Someone had orchestrated this. Someone had decided these children were expendable. Lucky, the ever-loyal dog, lay curled at his feet, occasionally glancing up as if sensing Noah's turmoil. "This doesn't add up, Lucky," Noah muttered, rubbing his temple. Why were they left there? And what was supposed to happen next? Determined to find answers, Noah returned to the burned forest at first light. The fire had been contained, but the damage was extensive. He made his way to the remains of the cabin, now reduced to a pile of charred wood and ash. Lucky trotted ahead, sniffing through the debris. As Noah sifted through the wreckage, something caught his eye. A partially melted metal box buried beneath the rubble. He carefully pried it open, revealing a collection of papers, photographs, and documents. Though many were damaged, a few remained intact. One photograph showed a group of children, including Emma and some of the others he had rescued. They stood in front of the very cabin where he had found them, their expressions somber. Scrawled across the back were the words, "Batch number 17, relocate ASAP." Noah's blood ran cold. This wasn't random. The language was clinical, detached, as if these children were nothing more than inventory. Among the other documents, he found a ledger listing names, dates, and cryptic notations like processed, transferred, and unsuitable. The implications were horrifying. This was evidence of a systematized operation. Noah brought the evidence to the local authorities, his frustration mounting as they reviewed the documents with infuriatingly little urgency. "This looks bad," the detective admitted, leaning back in his chair. "But without knowing who's behind it or where they're operating from, there's not much we can do." "Not much you can do?" Noah snapped, his voice rising. "These are children's lives we're talking about." "We understand, Mr. Parker," the detective replied evenly. "But without clear leads or a witness willing to testify, this is just circumstantial." Noah clenched his fists, resisting the urge to argue further. He had hoped the authorities would share his urgency, but it was clear he couldn't rely on them to take immediate action. As he left the station, Lucky trotted beside him, tail wagging as if to remind Noah that giving up wasn't an option. Noah decided to take matters into his own hands. Using the information from the ledger, he began piecing together a timeline. The entries indicated that the cabin wasn't an isolated case. It was part of a larger network. He followed the trail to an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town. The building was decrepit, its windows shattered and its walls covered in graffiti. But inside, Noah found more chilling evidence. Rows of old mattresses, empty crates, and discarded toys. It was clear the warehouse had been used to house children temporarily before they were moved elsewhere. Noah took photographs of everything and called a trusted friend, Sarah, who worked as a journalist. She arrived within the hour, her face grim as she took in the scene. "This is big, Noah," she said, her voice low. "If what you're saying is true, this could expose a massive child trafficking ring." "I don't care how big it is," Noah replied. "We need to shut it down." Sarah nodded, pulling out her camera. "I'll help you, but we need more than just pictures. We need testimony, evidence that ties this to specific people." Over the next few days, Noah and Sarah worked tirelessly. With Lucky as their constant companion, they tracked down families connected to the children. Many were reluctant to speak, their shame and fear palpable. But a few shared stories that confirmed Noah's worst fears. One woman tearfully admitted that she had been coerced into giving up her son after losing her job and being unable to provide for him. "They said it was better for him," she sobbed, "that he'd have a better life. But I never heard from them again." Another man described how his niece had disappeared after being placed in foster care. They said she ran away, he said bitterly. But she was only 8. Where would she go? Piece by piece, the picture became clearer. This wasn't just about neglect or abandonment. It was a well-organized operation that exploited vulnerable families for profit. Late one night, while reviewing the evidence, Noah noticed something unusual in one of the photographs from the ledger. In the corner of the image, barely visible, was the logo of a high-end security company. Why would a company like that be involved in something like this? He mused aloud. Sarah leaned over his shoulder, studying the image. Maybe they're not directly involved, but someone connected to them could be. Noah's heart pounded as a theory began to form. What if the operation wasn't just about children? What if it was about money? People with power and resources would have the means to fund such an operation, and the connections to cover it up. Lucky barked suddenly, drawing their attention. The dog stood by the door, his ears perked and his body tense. Noah moved cautiously, peering outside. A black SUV idled across the street, its windows tinted. "We've been noticed," Sarah said grimly. Noah's jaw tightened. "Good. Let them know we're coming for them." The SUV disappeared into the night, leaving Noah and Sarah with an unsettling sense of urgency. The walls were closing in, and they both knew their pursuit of the truth had attracted dangerous attention. Noah clenched his fists, a mix of anger and determination burning within him. "We're on the right track," Sarah said, trying to lighten the weight of their discovery. "That's what worries me," Noah replied, glancing at Lucky, who stood vigilantly by his side, ears alert to every sound. The next morning, Noah decided it was time to confront the system. Armed with the ledger, photographs, and testimonies they had gathered, he scheduled meetings with child welfare officials and local government representatives. He hoped that presenting the overwhelming evidence would force them to act. But as he sat across from a polished bureaucrat in a pristine office, his hope began to wane. "This is disturbing," the official admitted, flipping through the documents with a neutral expression. "But these kinds of cases are hard to prove. Without clear jurisdiction or direct evidence of wrongdoing by a specific party, our hands are tied." Noah leaned forward, his frustration boiling over. "These are children we're talking about. Innocent lives. How can you sit there and tell me there's nothing you can do?" The official sighed, adjusting his tie. "We can escalate it, but investigations take time. These things are complicated, Mr. Parker. I'm sorry." Noah left the office feeling defeated. He had hoped the authorities would step in, but it was clear the system was designed to move at a glacial pace, if it moved at all. Later that day, Sarah managed to arrange a meeting with a former child welfare worker, someone who had left the system disillusioned. Her name was Karen, and she greeted them in her modest home with a weary smile. "I've seen things you wouldn't believe," she said, her voice tinged with bitterness. "The system isn't just broken, it's corrupt. There's money to be made in every step of the process, from foster care to adoption, and the ones who suffer most are the kids." Karen shared stories that echoed the children's accounts. Overworked caseworkers cutting corners, children being moved from home to home, and families being pressured into decisions they didn't fully understand. When Noah showed her the ledger, her face darkened. This is organized," she said, tracing the names and dates with a trembling finger. "This isn't just neglect. Someone's profiting from this." "Who?" Noah pressed. "Who's behind it?" Karen hesitated, fear flickering in her eyes. "I can't say for sure. But if you're digging into this, be careful. People who ask too many questions don't always get answers. They get silenced." That night, Noah lay awake, the weight of Karen's warning heavy on his mind. Lucky rested by his side, his quiet presence a source of comfort. Noah stared at the ceiling, his thoughts racing. Every path he had taken so far seemed to lead back to the same conclusion. This wasn't just about neglectful families or overwhelmed caseworkers. It was a system designed to fail the most vulnerable, and someone, likely many someones, was profiting from the chaos. But Noah wasn't about to give up. He had promised Emma and the other children that he would fight for them, and he intended to keep that promise, no matter the cost. The following day, Sarah suggested a new approach: going public. "We've done all we can behind the scenes," she said. "It's time to expose this. If the system won't act, maybe public pressure will force their hand." Noah hesitated. Taking their findings to the media would be risky. It could attract more attention from the people they were investigating, putting both him and the children in danger. But it could also be their best chance at justice. "Let's do it," he said finally. "The world needs to know what's happening." Sarah contacted a trusted journalist from a major news outlet. Together, they worked to compile a comprehensive report, complete with photographs, testimonies, and the ledger that detailed the systematic exploitation of children. The journalist was horrified by what they uncovered. "This could be the story of the year," she said. "But it's also dangerous. Are you ready for the backlash?" Noah nodded. "These kids deserve justice. I'll take whatever comes." The report aired 2 days later, a primetime exposé that laid bare the horrors of the child trafficking ring. The broadcast included interviews with Noah, Sarah, and Karen, as well as blurred footage of the children recounting their experiences. The nation watched in shock as the story unfolded, revealing the cracks in a system that was supposed to protect its most vulnerable. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Viewers flooded social media with outrage, demanding accountability. Government officials scrambled to address the scandal, promising swift investigations and reforms. But not everyone was pleased with the revelations. Late that night, as Noah sat in his dimly lit living room, there was a loud knock at the door. Lucky growled low in his throat, his hackles raised. Noah approached cautiously, peering through the peephole. A man in a dark suit stood on the porch, his expression unreadable. "Mr. Parker," the man said when Noah opened the door. "We need to talk." Noah's pulse quickened, but he held his ground. "Who are you?" The man handed him a business card. It bore the name of the security company whose logo he had seen in the ledger. "I think you already know," the man said, his voice calm but with an undercurrent of menace. Lucky barked sharply, stepping between Noah and the man. "This isn't over, Mr. Parker," the man said before turning and walking away. Noah closed the door, his mind racing. Whoever was behind this wasn't going to back down without a fight. Noah sat at his kitchen table, staring at the business card left by the man in the dark suit. The bold logo of the high-end security company was stamped at the top, a taunting reminder of how deep this conspiracy ran. Lucky sat at his feet, his sharp eyes trained on the door as though sensing the tension that had filled the room. "This is it," Noah muttered to himself, gripping the card tightly. "We're getting too close, and they're starting to push back." Sarah entered the room, her phone in hand. "I just got off the call with the journalist. The story's gone viral. People are furious, Noah. They're demanding investigations, resignations, everything. But—" Noah looked up at her, his jaw tightening. "But what?" "Authorities are dragging their feet," she admitted, her voice heavy with frustration. "The backlash has stirred something, but it's clear there are people in high places trying to keep this quiet." Noah slammed his fist on the table, the sound startling Lucky. "Then we won't wait for them. If the system won't act, we will." Sarah hesitated, her concern evident. "Noah, these people are dangerous. You saw that man. If we go any further, we might be putting ourselves, and the kids, in serious danger." Noah's expression softened as he— "I know the risks, Sarah, but I can't stand by while they keep getting away with this. Those kids deserve justice, and I won't stop until they get it." Later that day, Noah and Sarah began assembling a team of trusted allies, local activists, retired police officers, and even a few private investigators willing to work off the record. Together, they strategized a plan to expose the individuals behind the trafficking ring directly. Their first move was to track down one of the names listed in the ledger, Charles Maynard, a wealthy entrepreneur whose connections seemed to intertwine suspiciously with the— "He's the kind of guy who hides in plain sight," Sarah explained as they studied his profile. "Big mansion, charity galas, a philanthropist on the surface, but look deeper and you'll see the cracks." Noah's lips pressed into a grim line. "He's funding this, isn't he?" Sarah nodded. "Or at the very least, he knows who." Noah and Sarah staked out one of Maynard's properties, a sprawling mansion surrounded by high walls and guarded gates. It was a far cry from the desolate cabins and warehouses where the children had been abandoned. The contrast was sickening. Lucky sat quietly in the back seat of their car, his ears twitching as they watched Maynard exit his home. He was flanked by 2 men in suits who looked more like bodyguards than business associates. "This guy's untouchable," Sarah muttered, snapping photos through the car window. "We need something concrete if we're going to bring him down." Noah's eyes narrowed as he spotted a courier approaching the house, carrying a small, locked briefcase. The exchange was quick, but it didn't escape Noah's notice. "What's in the case?" he wondered aloud. "We won't find out sitting here," Sarah replied. That night they infiltrated Maynard's estate. With Lucky leading the way, they avoided security patrols and reached the mansion's office. Inside, they found documents that confirmed their suspicions. Maynard was a key player in the op. "This is it," Sarah whispered, photographing everything they found. "This ties him directly to the trafficking network." But their success was short-lived. A sudden alarm pierced the silence, and footsteps echoed down the hall. "Go!" Noah hissed, grabbing the papers they hadn't yet photographed. Lucky barked sharply, leading them through a side door as guards closed in. They barely escaped, diving into the bushes as flashlights swept the area. "Too close," Sarah panted as they reached the car. Noah nodded, his adrenaline still pumping. "But we have what we need." The next morning, they handed the evidence over to the journalist, who promised to release an updated exposé targeting Maynard specifically. The story exploded, forcing Maynard into hiding. But the victory felt hollow. The trafficking ring was too vast, too deeply rooted to crumble with the exposure of one man. "We've taken down a piece of the puzzle," Sarah said. "But the picture's still incomplete." Noah refused to give up. He tracked down another name from the ledger, Marcus Denton, a mid-level operator in the network. Unlike Maynard, Denton was small-time, a man who preferred to operate in the shadows. With Sarah's help, Noah cornered Denton in a parking garage late one night. The man froze, his eyes wide with fear, as Noah stepped out of the shadows. "I know what you've been doing," Noah said, his voice low and menacing. "And you're going to tell me everything," Denton stammered, his bravado crumbling under Noah's intensity. I don't know what you're talking about." Noah stepped closer, his fists clenched. "Don't lie to me. I have the ledger. I have names, dates, and places. I know exactly what you've done." Lucky growled softly, adding to the intimidation. All right," Denton relented, holding up his hands. "I'll talk." What he revealed was horrifying. The trafficking ring wasn't just about abandoned children. It was a lucrative enterprise that exploited families in desperate situations. The network extended far beyond the local area, with connections to wealthy investors and corrupt officials. Noah's stomach churned as Denton described how the children were treated like commodities, their lives reduced to dollar signs on a balance sheet. "Who's at the top?" Noah demanded. Denton hesitated, his fear evident. "You don't want to go after him. He's too powerful. He'll bury you." Noah grabbed him by the collar, his eyes blazing. "Who?" Denton swallowed hard. "Richard Kincaid. He's the one pulling the strings. But if you go after him, you'll be signing your death warrant." Armed with this new information, Noah and Sarah prepared to take the fight to the top. They knew the risks, but they also knew they couldn't stop now. As they planned their next move, Lucky sat at their feet, his unwavering loyalty a reminder of the lives they were fighting for. "Let's finish this," Noah said, determination burning in his eyes. The air in the small apartment was tense as Noah and Sarah pored over the details Denton had provided. The name Richard Kincaid loomed large in their minds, a wealthy and influential figure with the power to crush anyone who dared challenge him. Kincaid wasn't just part of the trafficking ring, he was its architect, a man who had turned the exploitation of children into a business empire. Lucky lay at Noah's feet, occasionally lifting his head as if sensing the gravity of the moment. "He's untouchable," Sarah muttered, her eyes scanning the background checks they had pulled on Kincaid. "Real estate, tech investments, political connections. This guy owns half the city." "Everyone has a weakness," Noah replied, his voice firm. "We just need to find his." Their first step was to follow the money. With Sarah's journalist contacts, they traced financial transactions linked to Kincaid's network. It wasn't easy. His wealth was meticulously layered through shell companies and offshore accounts. But after hours of digging, they uncovered a key lead, a private storage facility owned by one of Kincaid's subsidiaries. "If he's hiding something, it's there," Sarah said, tapping the address on the screen. Noah nodded. "Then that's where we'll go." The storage facility was located on the outskirts of the city, surrounded by barbed wire and patrolled by armed guards. Noah and Sarah watched from a distance, their hearts pounding as they mapped out a plan. "This isn't just a storage unit," Sarah observed. "This is a fortress." "Which means whatever's inside is important," Noah replied. They waited until nightfall. When the guards' shifts changed, and approached the facility under the cover of darkness. Lucky stayed close to Noah, his movements silent and deliberate. With Sarah's help, Noah disabled the perimeter cameras and picked the lock on a side entrance. Inside, the facility was eerily quiet, the fluorescent lights casting harsh shadows on rows of metal doors. "Let's make this quick," Sarah whispered. They moved cautiously, checking the numbered units against the records they had uncovered. Finally, they found it. Unit 47C. Noah pried the door open, revealing rows of file cabinets and crates stacked neatly inside. The air was thick with dust, but the contents were anything but mundane. Sarah opened the nearest crate and gasped. Inside were stacks of documents, birth certificates, medical records, and adoption papers. "This is it," she said, her voice shaking. "This is how they've been operating." Noah flipped through the files, his stomach churning as he read the details. Each paper told a story of betrayal and exploitation. Children taken from desperate families, shuffled through the system, and sold to the highest bidder. "This isn't just trafficking," he said grimly. "It's a marketplace." As they worked, Lucky barked softly, his ears twitching. Noah froze, listening intently. Footsteps echoed down the corridor. "Someone's coming," he hissed. They quickly began photographing the documents, their hands trembling with urgency. The footsteps grew louder, accompanied by the low murmur of voices. "We're out of time," Sarah whispered. Noah stuffed a handful of files into his backpack. "Let's move." They slipped out of the unit and ducked into a nearby alcove just as two guards rounded the corner. Lucky remained perfectly still, his instincts sharp as the guards passed within inches of their hiding spot. Once the coast was clear, they made their way back to the exit, their hearts racing. But as they reached the door, an alarm blared, flooding the facility with red lights. "Run!" Noah shouted. They sprinted across the parking lot, narrowly avoiding the guards' gunfire. Lucky barked furiously, staying close to Noah's side as they dove into the car and sped away. Back at Sarah's apartment, they examined the files they had managed to retrieve. Among the documents was a ledger similar to the one Noah had found at the cabin. But this one included names tied directly to Kincaid. "This proves he's running the operation," Sarah said, her voice trembling with both anger and triumph. "We have everything we need to expose him." But Noah wasn't convinced. "It's not enough," he said. "He'll deny everything, claim these documents were fabricated. We need something more, something that directly ties him to the trafficking." Sarah frowned. "What are you thinking?" "I need to confront him," Noah said, face to face. The next morning, Noah called Kincaid's office, posing as a whistleblower with information about the investigation. To his surprise, Kincaid agreed to meet him at a private club downtown. Sarah was horrified. "You're walking into a trap," she warned. "Maybe," Noah admitted. "But if I can get him to slip up, we'll have all the proof we need." The club was as luxurious as Noah had expected, its opulent decor a stark contrast to the horrors Kincaid had orchestrated. The man himself sat at a corner table, his polished demeanor exuding confidence and power. "Noah Parker," Kincaid said with a smirk as Noah approached. "I've heard a lot about you." Noah sat across from him, his fists clenched under the table. "I know what you've been doing," he said bluntly. Kincaid chuckled, swirling his glass of whiskey. "You're going to have to be more specific. I have my hands in a lot of things." Noah leaned forward, his voice low and steady. "I have the documents, the ledgers, the testimonies. It's over." Kincaid's smile faltered for a moment, but he quickly recovered. "Do you really think you can take me down? I have more money, more lawyers, and more connections than you can imagine." "Money won't save you this time," Noah said. "People are watching. The world knows what you've done." For the first time, Kincaid's mask of confidence cracked. His eyes narrowed, and his voice turned icy. "You're playing a dangerous game, Mr. Parker. Walk away while you still can." Noah stood, his resolve unshaken. "You'll answer for what you've done, one way or another." That night, Sarah uploaded their findings to every major news outlet, ensuring the evidence would be seen by millions. The backlash was immediate. Protests erupted, and calls for Kincaid's arrest flooded social media. But Noah knew the fight wasn't over. Kincaid's resources ran deep, and his allies would stop at nothing to protect him. As he stood in the doorway of the shelter, watching the rescued children play with Lucky, he made a silent vow. He wouldn't rest until Kincaid was behind bars and the children were safe. The world was watching. The exposé on Richard Kincaid's trafficking ring had gone viral, sparking outrage and demands for justice from every corner of the country. Streets filled with protesters holding signs demanding accountability, while media outlets dissected every aspect of the evidence Noah and Sarah had uncovered. But for Noah, the fight was far from over. He knew Kincaid wouldn't go down without a fight. The man had evaded justice for years, protected by his wealth, connections, and ruthlessness. Noah was determined to dismantle that shield, piece by piece. The children's stories. At the shelter, the children rescued from the cabin had begun to heal. Though still wary and scarred by their experiences, they had started to laugh again, playing games and sharing meals. Lucky, ever the guardian, had become their companion, a source of comfort and protection. Emma, the oldest of the group, had taken on a leadership role among the children, her quiet resilience inspiring the others. She often sat with Noah, sharing fragments of memories about their time in captivity. "They used to say we were nothing," Emma said one evening, her voice trembling. "That no one would care if we disappeared." Noah's heart ached at her. "They were wrong," he said firmly. "You matter. Every single one of you matters. And we're going to make sure no one ever does this again." Tracking Kincaid had gone into hiding, but Noah and Sarah's growing network of allies worked tirelessly to track his movements. With the help of private investigators and whistleblowers, they discovered that Kincaid was planning to flee the country, using a private jet to escape prosecution. "This is it," Sarah said, pacing the room as they finalized their plan. "If we let him leave, we may never get another chance." Noah nodded. "We need to get the authorities involved. They can't ignore this anymore." Reluctantly, he reached out to the detective who had dismissed him before. This time, armed with overwhelming evidence and public pressure, the detective agreed to act. The arrest. The operation was swift and precise. As Kincaid prepared to board his jet at a private airfield, law enforcement officers swarmed the area, their vehicles blocking every exit. Kincaid, dressed in a tailored suit and flanked by bodyguards, sneered as the officers approached. "This is a mistake," he said arrogantly. "You have no idea who you're dealing with." But the officers were unfazed. They presented him with a warrant, listing charges that included human trafficking, corruption, and conspiracy. Noah watched from a distance, his heart pounding as Kincaid was handcuffed and escorted to a waiting car. The sight of the man who had caused so much pain finally facing justice was both satisfying and surreal. As Kincaid passed him, their eyes met. "This isn't over," Kincaid hissed. Noah's jaw tightened. "For you, it is." Reuniting families. With Kincaid in custody, efforts to dismantle his network intensified. Authorities began reuniting the rescued children with their families, many of whom had been searching for them for years. At the shelter, tearful reunions became a daily occurrence. Parents embraced their children, their sobs of relief echoing through the halls. For some, it was the first glimmer of hope they had experienced in a long time. Emma, however, had no one to reunite with. When Noah sat with her to explain that her parents hadn't been found, her response was quiet but determined. "It's okay," she said, holding Lucky close. "I have you and the others. That's enough for me." Noah's throat tightened. He had grown attached to Emma and the other children, their resilience and courage inspiring him every day. A new mission. Determined to ensure no child would ever face such horrors again, Noah began laying the groundwork for a foundation dedicated to rescuing and supporting vulnerable children. The foundation would provide safe housing, education, and therapy for survivors, as well as advocate for systemic reforms to prevent trafficking and exploitation. Sarah joined him in the endeavor, using her platform as a journalist to raise awareness and rally support. Together, they turned their anger and grief into action, channeling their energy into creating lasting change. Noah also made a deeply personal decision. He filed for legal guardianship of Emma, officially making her part of his family. When the paperwork was finalized, she hugged him tightly, tears streaming down her face. "I have a home now," she whispered. "Yes, you do," Noah replied, his voice thick with emotion. "And you always will." Lucky's role. Lucky, who had become a symbol of hope and resilience throughout their journey, was celebrated by the children and the community alike. His role in the rescue operation became a local legend, and Noah often joked that the dog had more fans than he did. Emma made a collar for Lucky, inscribed with the words, "Our Guardian Angel." A community transformed. As Noah stood in front of a crowd at the foundation's opening ceremony, he reflected on how far they had come. The shelter was now a thriving center for hope and healing, its walls filled with the laughter of children who had once known only fear. "We've proven that even in the darkest times there's light to be found," Noah said, his voice steady and resolute. "This is just the beginning. Together, we can create a world where every child is safe, loved, and valued." The audience erupted in applause, their cheers a testament to the power of courage and compassion. The courtroom was silent as the judge delivered the final verdict. Richard Kincaid, once untouchable in his empire of wealth and power, stood motionless as the words echoed in the chamber, "Guilty on all counts." A murmur rippled through the audience, a mixture of relief and quiet triumph. Families of the rescued children wept openly, holding their little ones close. For Noah, it was the culmination of months of tireless effort, sleepless nights, and unrelenting determination. Beside him, Emma sat holding Lucky's leash, her small fingers brushing the dog's fur. She looked up at Noah with a quiet smile. "You did it," she whispered. "No," Noah replied, his voice thick with emotion. "We did it." The celebration of healing. The weeks following Kincaid's conviction were filled with both joy and hard work. The foundation Noah and Sarah had established was flourishing, supported by donations from around the world. People were inspired by the story of the children who had been saved and the courage of the man and his allies who refused to give up on them. The shelter where the children had been housed during the investigation was now a permanent safe haven, its walls adorned with colorful murals painted by the children themselves. Emma, who had taken on a leadership role among the other kids, worked tirelessly to help the younger ones adjust to their new lives. She often sat with Lucky in the afternoons, reading aloud or sketching in a note. One day, as she helped a little boy tie his shoes, she glanced up at Noah and said, "I want to help kids like you helped me." Noah's chest swelled with pride. "You already are," he said, ruffling her. The final reunion. Not every child had been reunited with their families, but for those who had, the moments were unforgettable. Noah stood by as parents embraced their children, their tears of relief mingling with overwhelming gratitude. One afternoon, a social worker approached Noah with surprising news. "Emma's aunt has been located," she said. Noah's heart sank. He had grown to love Emma as his own, and the thought of losing her was almost unbearable. But he knew the right thing to do was to let her decide. When he told Emma, her reaction was thoughtful and mature beyond her years. "Can I meet her first?" she asked. "Of course," Noah said, his voice steady despite the ache in his chest. The meeting was arranged, and Emma's aunt turned out to be a kind woman who had been searching for her niece ever since her sister had passed away. The bond was immediate, but so was Emma's hesitation. Afterward, she sat with Noah, her head resting on Lucky's side. "She's nice," Emma said quietly, "but my home is here. With you." Noah hugged her tightly, tears streaming down his face. "Then here is where you'll stay," he promised. Lucky's legacy. Lucky became a symbol of hope not just for the children, but for the entire community. The local fire station adopted him as their official mascot, and a statue was erected in his honor at the shelter's entrance, depicting the brave dog leading Noah and the children out of the fire. Emma proudly unveiled the statue during a ceremony, her voice trembling with emotion as she spoke. "Lucky wasn't just a dog," she said. "He was a hero. He saved us when we needed him most." Noah placed a hand on her shoulder, his eyes glistening with pride. A family forever months turned into years, and the once fractured lives of the children began. Emma thrived under Noah's care, excelling in school and eventually helping him run the foundation. Together, they expanded its reach, rescuing and supporting children from all walks of life. Lucky, though older and slower, remained by their side, his presence a constant reminder of their journey. On Emma's 18th birthday, Noah surprised her with a gift that brought tears to her eyes, a small plaque with the words, "Our family isn't about blood, it's about love." "You're my daughter," Noah said, his voice thick with emotion, "and you always will be." Emma hugged him fiercely, her tears soaking into his shirt. "I love you, Dad." The final chapter. As Noah stood on the porch of their modest but warm home, watching the sunset with Emma and Lucky by his side, he reflected on how far they had come. What had begun as a harrowing rescue in the midst of a wildfire had blossomed into a story of redemption, love, and hope. "Do you think it's over?" Emma asked, her gaze fixed on the horizon. Noah smiled. "The hard part might be. But the work? That's just beginning." Together, they walked inside, their hearts full of gratitude for the family they had built and the lives they had changed. This story shows how courage and compassion can change lives. If this journey moved you, don't forget to follow the channel and leave a like on this video. Your support helps us continue sharing stories that inspire and make a difference. Also, share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. Together, we can spread awareness and hope. Thank you for being here, and we'll see you in the next story.